I'm going to make a very simple proposition, that Russia must develop as its top priority an information sector. And the reason is this is the core technology of the new Kondratiev. It is what the motor car was to post-war growth. It is what the steam train was to the Victorian epoch. If you do this, you will do two things. First of all, you will provide the technology which is needed to renovate industry. There is much talk about reindustrialization, as if you just go down and then you come up. Actually, if you look at the history of the United States, of Germany, of all the major industrial powers, that isn't what happens. What really happens is every time a new core technology comes along, you reorganize all the old systems on a new basis. So, for example, if you develop an information sector, and if you develop all the sectors that are needed to make that work, which means you have to have an independent electronics sector, you have to have an independent education sector capable of providing a skilled workforce for that. You can then transform industrial production to the new stage which has already been reached with what Japanese and German manufacturers have done. That is robotics, automation, flexible manufacturing. You can transform power. It's not just a question of putting Russia's aging power station system back to work, perhaps using oil instead of coal or whatever the fuel now is. It's a question of transforming to the new technologies which combine diverse sources such as solar, hydro, biofuels with smart grid technology which requires smart information and modern electronics. So it's a transformative industry which allows you to reorganize all the other industries. On that basis you will also create new forms of consumption, because new consumption is the basis of every major takeoff, new forms of enjoyment of the products that come to us as a result of the electronics revolution. I have very simple advice for you. If you wish to know what are the new products of the information age, ask your daughter what is on her smartphone. She will tell you. For this, you need two things. You need a financial policy which is directed towards that, and you need an industrial policy which makes sure that the growth of each of these sectors is related, and the centre of that has to be technology transfer, so you're not dependent on external expertise. Already, therefore, we see there is a framework for planning. Now, when I talk about a framework for planning, I don't mean a return to central planning. I mean simply using numbers that add up. If you decide that you're going to have an independent information sector, you already know what the size of the electronic sector will have to be, and you can direct the resources into that. You also know how many skilled scientists and engineers you will need. And if you don't know that, if you find out that you will need 3 million or 5 million, and you have universities that are only producing 1 million, it follows as night follows day, you will be dependent on foreign experts who will cut your throat. So that's a planning decision. It's not central planning, but at least it means that you don't do things that are completely stupid. It's also, it gets out of the old idea that the plan system gets you into the system of autarky, because it's an export-oriented strategy. By investing in the highest and most advanced form of modern technology, you are in a position in 10 years' time to become the supplier to the rest of the world of the products on which they will depend. Just as China is now able to invite Canada and Britain to join it in the Asian Investment Bank, the United States get very angry and can't say no. Why? Because China is now an exporter, not merely an importer, not just of cheap products, but advanced technology products they wish to be part of. This conforms to a fundamental law of economics, which is every new wave of development has been on the basis of the highest technology, not the oldest. Secondly, it's always been state-led. Let's take as an example the United States of America. The very first stage of America under the system known as Hamiltonianism, the inventor Hamilton, combined finance and innovation to enable the great inventors. What do you know about America of the early 19th century? You know about Edison, Bell, Tesla, Franklin. And you have the story of Schumpeter, which is the miraculous marriage of the innovator and finance. What they don't tell you is this marriage is an arranged marriage. The state brings the two partners together and everybody lives happily ever after. And if they don't get married, then along comes the shotgun. to make sure that they get married. That's the part of the story of innovation you are not told. That's what industrial policy is about. Following that, in World War I, they invested in new technology, in electrification was the fundamental basis, in steel, and overhauled the rest of industry on the basis of that technology. They did it again after World War II with petrol technology. Let's look at how this now affects what's happening in the modern world. And a very interesting fact, I'm sure my Japanese colleague will confirm, the Japanese transformation of technology, the evolution of quality assurance in the Toyota model, actually began with an American expert, Deming, who introduced quality assurance methods into Japan, having been thrown out of the United States for daring to say that wartime planning methods should be continued after the war. Which is another point, that any great industrial revolution begins, any great transformation of technology begins with importing expertise from abroad. So you've already made a start with Edward Snowden. Can I suggest the next step is to make it a lot easier to get a visa? It took me 4 weeks, it should take 1 day. Then you can come in and you can say to people, come and make your home, come and build your technology here, come and join with Russian programmers who are the best in the world in centres of excellence that will create on the basis of open source technology for which you pay nothing. You pay nothing to transfer the technology except to give a place where these innovators, these young people can actually create their product. Having done that, they reached a certain stage and it came to a stop. Why? Sony is the answer. Sony discovered that when they came up against the technology of VHS versus Philips, they had to develop content. They had to have the products that were sold, the new consumer products, sold on the basis of that. The Koreans, and I will finish on this, because this, in my opinion, is Russia's future, came up with a new solution. They used to visit us when I worked at the GLA for 10 years to find out our method for the creative industry. They then went back to Korea and applied it and systematically restructured not merely the electronics industry, but the software production industry and the consumer industry. And they came up with the Android phone. Took everybody by surprise. It was not a surprise to the Koreans. They had planned that breakthrough for 10 years, starting with understanding that this was the technology of the future. That possibility is absolutely open to Russia. It's a political decision. It's a decision of will, not capacity. All the resources are there.